There's this idea a lot of people have about trauma. They think it has to be something extreme, something obvious, something you can point to and say, that right there, that's what broke me. But trauma doesn't always look like that. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's the things that didn't happen, the love you didn't get, the safety you didn't feel, the consistency that was never there. And because it's not loud, because it's not dramatic, a lot of people walk around carrying trauma and don't even realize that's what it is. They just think this is just how I am, but it's not. It's what you adapted to. Trauma is less about what happened and more about how it shaped you. It's how your body learned to respond, how your mind learned to protect you. Because at its core, trauma is survival. It's your system saying, that hurt. We're never letting that happen again. So it builds defenses, walls, patterns, reactions, and those things keep you safe for a while. But here's the problem. What protects you in one season of life can limit you in the next. Maybe you learned to shut down emotionally because expressing yourself wasn't safe. Now you struggle to connect with people. Maybe you learn to always be on edge, always alert, always prepared. Now you can't relax, even when things are okay. Maybe you learn to people please because love felt conditional. Now you lose yourself trying to keep everyone else happy. And from the outside, people just see behaviors. They say, why are you like that? Why do you overthink everything? Why can't you just let things go? But what they don't see is the origin. Trauma doesn't just live in your memories. It lives in your reactions, in your triggers, in the way your body tightens when something feels familiar. And that's why healing isn't just about getting over it. It's about understanding it. A lot of people try to skip that part. They try to outgrow trauma without facing it. They distract themselves. They stay busy. They avoid anything that brings it up. And for a while, that works until it doesn't. Because unprocessed trauma doesn't disappear. It shows up in different ways, in relationships, in habits, in the way you talk to yourself. You might not even connect it at first. You just feel stuck or anxious or disconnected or like something is off, but you can't explain why. And here's something that might be hard to hear. You can't heal what you refuse to acknowledge. You don't have to relive everything. You don't have to sit in pain forever, but you do have to be honest about what hurt you, about what shaped you, about what you've been carrying. Because healing starts with awareness, not judgment, not shame, just awareness. Looking at your patterns and asking, where did this come from? Not in a blaming way, but in an understanding way. Because when you understand something, you gain power over it, and that's the shift. You go from, this is just who I am, to this is what I learned, and I can learn something different. Now let's talk about something else. People don't say enough. Healing doesn't happen overnight. It's not one breakthrough moment where everything suddenly makes sense and disappears. It's a process. Sometimes slow, sometimes uncomfortable, sometimes frustrating, because you're not just changing thoughts. You're rewiring patterns that have been there for years, patterns that once protected you. And your mind doesn't just let those go easily, even if they're not serving you anymore. Because to your brain, familiar equals safe. Even if it hurts, even if it keeps you stuck. So when you start doing things differently, setting boundaries, opening up, letting people in, choosing yourself, It can feel wrong at first, not because it is wrong, but because it's unfamiliar. That's something a lot of people misunderstand. They think if it feels uncomfortable, it must not be right. But discomfort is often a sign that you're growing, that you're stepping outside of old patterns, that you're becoming someone new. And here's where it gets real. Healing trauma doesn't mean you forget what happened. It doesn't mean it never affected you. It means it no longer controls you. It means you can experience something without being pulled back into the past. It means you can respond instead of react, because that's the goal. Not perfection, not being fully healed in some unrealistic way, but awareness, choice, freedom, freedom from automatic reactions, freedom from patterns you didn't choose, freedom to create a different version of yourself. And that freedom comes from doing the work, the internal work, the uncomfortable work, the work that nobody sees. It might look like sitting with your thoughts instead of avoiding them, noticing your triggers instead of reacting immediately, having hard conversations, setting boundaries even when it feels scary, letting yourself feel things you've been avoiding. And that last one is big because a lot of trauma gets stored through suppressed emotion. Things you didn't process at the time, things you pushed down because you had to keep going. But those emotions don't disappear. They wait until you're ready to face them. And when you do, it can feel overwhelming. But it's also where healing begins. Now let's talk about something important. Healing is not about blaming everyone else forever. Yes, things may have happened that weren't your fault. Yes, you may have been hurt in ways you didn't deserve. That matters. That's real. But at some point, your healing becomes your responsibility. Not because what happened was okay, but because you deserve to move forward. You deserve peace. You deserve to not carry that weight forever. And holding on to pain doesn't punish the past. It only limits your future. So the question becomes, what are you going to do with what you've been through? Are you going to let it define you? Or are you going to understand it and grow beyond it? Because trauma can do two things. It can close you off, or it can open you up to a deeper level of awareness, strength, and empathy. But that choice doesn't happen automatically. It happens intentionally, through reflection, through effort, through deciding that your past doesn't get to control your future. And no, that's not easy. It's one of the hardest things you'll ever do. But it's also one of the most powerful, because when you start healing, you start changing more than just yourself. You change your relationships, your decisions, your environment, even the way you see the world. You stop reacting from old wounds and start responding from who you are becoming. And that's where real transformation happens. Not in pretending everything is fine, but in facing what isn't and working through it. So if you've been feeling stuck, if you've been feeling like something is off, if you've been reacting in ways you don't fully understand, don't ignore that. Get curious about it. Ask yourself, what did I learn that I'm still holding on to? What am I protecting myself from? What patterns am I repeating? Because those questions lead to awareness, and awareness leads to change. And remember this, you are not broken. You adapted. You survived. You did what you needed to do. Now you just have to decide what you want to carry forward and what you're ready to let go of. Because healing isn't about becoming someone completely new. It's about returning to who you were before the pain told you who you had to be. And that version of you, it's still there. Under the layers, under the patterns, under the protection, waiting. So take your time. Be patient with yourself. Do the work, even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it feels slow, because every step you take is a step toward freedom. And that's worth everything.